Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into one of the most anonymous yet just profoundly influential acts in the history of electronic music, Basic Channel.
Yeah.
This deep dive is all about two German figures who essentially pioneered the sound we now know as dub techno.
And their legacy, which, emerged from the utter chaos of 1990s Berlin, has been described by music writers in our sources as nothing less than an acoustic shifting of the earth.
That sounds dramatic.
It does, but I think by the end of this, you'll really understand why it's not an exaggeration.
So our mission today is pretty simple.
Hmm.
We want to trace the history of this sound right from the underground of 90s Berlin and figure out why these, few dozen, 12 inches really just changed how we listen to space in a club.
And to do that, you have to start in 1993, Berlin. The wall has been down for only a few years, and the city is just this gigantic, sprawling construction site. Everything is in flux.
And culturally, that means abandoned factories, derelict power plants, old bank vaults. They're all being turned into these, legendary clubs.
Exactly. Trezor, E-Work, Planet. And, the place that would eventually become the institution, Bergen.
It was a true cultural vacuum, just ripe for something new. But what's so fascinating is the paradox Basic Channel brought into the scene. The dominant sounds were hard minimal techno or soulful house.
And they offered neither. Their music
Right.
created a sonic space that was just fundamentally different. Instead of filling the track with more and more sound, they made music that was defined by the space that sounds behind the rhythm.
Right. It was the echo that carried all the weight.
Yeah.
They weren't just adding another subgenre. They were etching this new kind of spatial depth onto global club culture. When you hear it, it doesn't just hit you.
No, it swallows you.
It swallows you whole.
And if we get right to the core philosophy, it's this. Basic Channel realized that rhythm breathes not just between notes, but more importantly, between silence and residual sound. The echo, the decay, the reverb.
That was a revolution in how the acoustic space itself was being treated.
It absolutely was.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the architects themselves, who of course chose to remain almost entirely hidden. Basic Channel is Moritz von Oswald and Mark Ernestus. And if you bought one of their records in the mid-90s, the only thing on the jacket was this inorganic embossed logo.
A geometric pattern, usually.
Yeah.
No names, no photos, no context, nothing.
And that anonymity wasn't just a marketing choice, was it? It felt more philosophical.
Oh, it was central to the whole idea. They didn't want you focusing on the personality. They wanted you focusing purely on the sound and the space that sound generated.
And their backgrounds are so complementary, it's almost poetic. You have Moritz von Oswald, the sound architect.
Right?
He was a former percussionist. He was in that very artsy 80s pop group Palais Schaumburg. But
Yeah.
crucially, he'd been deep diving into African music and Jamaican dub for years. He was the creator.
And then on the other side, you have Mark Ernestus, who is totally rooted in the infrastructure of the scene. He founded Hardwax in 1990,
The record shop.
the record shop, which became the absolute nerve center for Berlin electronic music.
Hardwax wasn't just a shop, it was the filter. It was the place that imported and sort of validated early Detroit techno in Germany.
And that's the crucial synergy. Ernestus was the gatekeeper. He knew exactly what DJs were buying, what clubs needed, how music actually flowed through the community.
And Oswald was the mind trying to dismantle and rebuild those very sound structures.
So you have the creative pioneer and the infrastructure master.
How did that partnership influence their work then, beyond just distribution?
Well, it resulted in a label philosophy that was almost anti-commercial, but at the same time, perfectly optimized for getting the music out there. They understood the entire chain.
From the studio.
To the mastering, onto the vinyl, into the DJ's hands at Hardwax, and finally onto the club floor. They understood the whole journey, and that let them dictate the experience, focusing on depth and fidelity over just being loud.
That dual perspective really helps explain the shockwave of their early releases. I'm thinking of the 1993 classic Phillips track.
Yes.
That track really confused people. It took the driving rhythm of Detroit techno, but then just drowned it beautifully in the spatial processing of dub.
It was pure acoustic decay.
Yeah.
And it was so brilliantly engineered. If you listen, the kicks are powerful, but they seem to bleed out. Like air, the snares are almost gone.
And the delay, the residual sound, that becomes the main melody.
Exactly. The music was constructed not by what was there, but by the removal of sound, the negative space.
The space between the hits was what mattered.
And this is perfectly captured by the music critic Simon Reynolds. He wrote that Basic Channel's music changed techno from architecture to weather phenomenon.
That's such a powerful metaphor. Let's pause on that.
Yeah.
Because architecture is stable, it's predictable, you know where the walls are. Weather.
Weather is vast. It's immersive, atmospheric. Its boundaries are constantly shifting.
They turn the dance floor into an environment you experience rather than a structure you just moved inside.
Yes. The sound just envelops you like fog or rain. It makes the whole room feel unstable and deep.
And what's wild is that they did this by basically creating a digital reinvention of principles from, what, 70s Jamaican dub master.
Absolutely. King Tubby, Lee Scratch Perry, those pioneers were manipulating sound on analog tape. Basic Channel took their concept of sculpting residual sound and just applied modern digital processing to it.
Giving it this incredible precision and depth.
And this all connects back to what you call the philosophy of removal.
The courage to remove sound.
Yes. The effects they used, the delay, the feedback, the reverb, they weren't just ornamental. They weren't icing on the cake.
They were structural.
They were structural operations. They generated the acoustic space itself. If you took the effect away, the entire track would just collapse.
So if the effect is the structure, then what even is the music?
The fundamental philosophical answer, the one that defined dub techno, is this. Music is the place, the field, the environment, not the material, not the sound itself.
They forced you to listen not to the beat, but to the room the beat was happening in. So once they perfected this philosophy, where did they take it? That brings us to the platform they built.
Right. In 1995, they launched their sublabel, Chain Reaction. And this wasn't just a side project. It was like the institutionalization of their whole anonymous philosophy.
So Chain Reaction was designed for even more experimental projects, right? Doubling down on the idea that the brand was the voice, not the individual.
Exactly. The characteristics were so strict. No artist names on the jackets.
Yeah.
Just catalog numbers, a serial code.
And that created this powerful effect, didn't it? It gave you the sense that all these different releases were actually sharing the same acoustic space.
It wasn't about building stars. It was about fostering what they called a thought network through a chain reaction of sound.
And that anonymous platform became this crucial intersection for the entire future of Berlin electronic music. I mean, this is where you first hear people like Monolake, Porter Ricks, Vladislav Delay.
Substance, yeah. All the artists who would define the next 2 decades. Basic Channel went from being a single act to a collective philosophy.
But then, by the early 2000s, things shifted again.
Well, there was a feeling that this cold digital aesthetic needed a counterpoint. So they shifted into a new phase under the name Rhythm and Sound.
And this is where they decided to bring the human element back in.
Right. They started this deep fusion of voice and residual sound. They collaborated with these incredible reggae vocalists from Jamaica and Germany.
People like Tiki Man, Cornell Campbell, Jennifer Laura.
And if you think about tracks like King of My Empire or See Me Ya, the vocals aren't just sitting on top of the track.
Yeah, they're submerged in it. They're treated with the same reverb and delay, so they sound like they're echoing down some infinite tunnel.
And the structural design of those tracks was fascinating. They were often made to sound better inside the speaker, emphasizing that deep internal structure, not just maximizing club volume.
So the goal was to restore a human tremble to what could otherwise be seen as pretty cold, academic digital dub.
Yeah, our sources describe it as anonymous spirituality, even post-human prayer. They managed to find this profound warmth while staying completely minimalist and anonymous.
So what does this whole journey mean for the club landscape today? Because you can't talk about this sound without talking about Bergen.
You really can't. Their philosophy is foundational to that entire culture. It's all rooted in the idea of an acoustic community.
Explain that.
It's the shared physical experience of listening through a massive, perfectly tuned sound system, where the bodies in the room and the music become this single, unified field, all reacting to those ultra-low frequencies.
And their philosophy wasn't just artistic. It went right into the technical process. Their mastering house, Dub Plates and Mastering, is a huge part of this story.
It really is. Their whole mastering philosophy just flew in the face of industry standards, especially the loudness wars of the 90s.
Right, where everyone was just trying to make their record louder than the last one.
Exactly. They prioritized depth and dynamic range over commercial sound pressure. The technology was designed to make you hear the silence, to feel the space, not just get blasted with volume.
Okay, this feels like the perfect moment to actually break down the structure for our learner listener. This music is abstract, but it has a very distinct, almost mechanical flow. Let's walk through that sound design model they used.
Okay, so if you imagine the sound structure, It's like a circular engine. It starts with the dry audio source, a simple synth stab or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that sound is immediately fed into the crucial stage, delay and heavy feedback. This is what creates that infinite loop, the recurring echo.
So the original sound is instantly multiplied and sort of smeared across time.
Correct. From there, it passes into a reverb chamber, which gives it that vast physical space. But here's the key step. It's then pushed through a low-pass filter.
Now, for someone who isn't a sound engineer, what does that filter actually do?
Think of it as deliberately muffling the sharp edges. It strips away all the high, bright frequencies, the clicks, the hisses, all the treble. So all that's left is the deep subterranean rumble.
Which is what you feel in your chest.
That's the physical sensation. It hits the sub-bass reinforcement stage, creating that powerful rumble on a club system. And finally, the sound just decays away into the silence or decay zone.
And that termination point is so important because the core idea is that the end of one rhythmic cycle becomes the start of the next residual sound. It just loops back forever.
That circularity is brilliant. And you can still hear that influence everywhere today. Deep chord echo space, for example, are focused on that endless expansion of delay.
Or fluxion, still continuing that chain reaction style of meticulous, anonymous construction.
And you see it in the work of Gas, Wolfgang Voigt, who treats reverb like a massive echoing forest. Or artists like Yagia, CV333. They're all linked by this shared pursuit of depth.
The freedom constructed within residual sound.
Exactly. Yeah. Basic Channel didn't just add a new genre to post-wall Berlin. They fundamentally reconstructed the act of listening. They gave us silence as a tangible structural element.
And their music still feels so current today because of that focus on the spatial. Our sources make this really compelling point that ties it all together. Basic Channel sound is about listening to the space itself. The echo is time's lingering scent, a tunnel guiding you outside the immediate moment.
And since they believe the music is the place, not the material, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We've talked about this eternal residual sound they created. So how does the physical space you're in right now, your room, your office, the quiet structure of your headphones, how does that change the experience of that sound?
What happens when your own personal silence gets incorporated into the structure they built?
Keep listening for the space.